Hello, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Huddle. Today is Sunday, March 23rd. This is episode 56 of the Inside the Huddle podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Make sure to please like and subscribe. Another week down in the NFL offseason, another week post-free agency, and another week closer to the 2025 NFL Draft. Just a little over a month away from the draft in Detroit. So, of course, a lot of draft topics here, lots of draft conversations that'll take place, rumors, all this stuff over the next month or so, especially kind of now that the wave of free agency has ended. So April will definitely be a busy draft month. But today we've got a couple different topics to talk about, some free agency news. Giants find a quarterback. We'll let you know if that's good, bad. Winston, kind of, we'll see. Entertaining at least, but we'll dive into it. DiMari, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Pretty slow news week so far, but things are going to heat up here soon with the draft. For those that are, interested year round and try to find anything to keep up with, pro days are happening. I know a few happen.
Yeah.
We're going to get to some pro days. You're going to see some official numbers for anyone that wants to keep eyes out for that. But other than that, not really much. I guess Winston was the biggest news this weekend. The Giants possibly find their quarterback answer. So let's get into that.
Yeah, 100%. That's where we'll start. And we'll also get into some other quarterback rumors as well a little bit later on. But Winston was the biggest one. I'd also, I guess, say Rodgers visiting the Steelers with an in-person visit, but nothing really came out of that. I think the Rodgers thing's just dragging. It's just so annoying. It's every single offseason with this guy. It's every year you got to wonder whether he's playing. Now it's who he's playing with. It's just an annoying process that we're sitting here again with Rodgers. But the Giants, I think they realized the whole Rodgers stuff probably out of the Rodgers, finalists. And they go out and sign Jameis Winston. It's a 2-year deal, $8 million, so about $4 million per year. Don't think the guarantees and stuff like that have completely come out, the whole logistics, but 2 years, $8 million. So cheap contract, kind of what you would expect for Jameis Winston. Now, something that's interesting about this is you do hear some of the reports. This doesn't take the Giants actually out of the running for a guy like Russell Wilson. There's been some reporting just from some of the Giants beat reporters that they could still go after Russell Wilson even with the signing of Jameis Winston. So I don't know if I would even say that the Giants are necessarily my biggest takeaway here coming away from this deal is that they're quite done in the quarterback room. I think this is a new addition, of course, and then maybe another veteran, and then maybe you draft a rookie, whatever, however they want to kind of combine that. But we know what you're going to get out of Winston. I don't think this is a bad move for the Giants. I think it's not a move that's going to take them from 3 wins to 11 wins, and they're going to go win the division next year. But it's a move where you're going to get a guy that's going to stretch the field. He's going to take risks. He's going to take chances. I think if one guy's happy about this, it's probably Malik Neighbors, because he is going to force feed the ball to Neighbors. Neighbors is going to get his chances deep. What was some of your first thoughts when you saw this move go down?
Yeah, I'm right on board with you. I mean, we've seen this offense kind of nickel and dime their way down the field. Everything's kind of short, kind of scared to stretch the ball down the field before Neighbors. Obviously, Jameis is famous for that 30 for 30 season, and he's not afraid to take risks. He's not afraid to throw the ball down the field, and I think that's exactly what they need, especially in today's NFL, where we see like the most prolific offenses throw the ball down the field a lot. The Giants' way of how they're running their offense, not going to kind of get into Tyrone Tracy too much, but we talked about it. They're not a great team with a great running back. So that offense is going to have to stem from the arm of the quarterback. So I personally really like it for the Giants. Again, I'm right on board with you. Like, you're not going from 3 wins to 11 wins with Jameis Winston, or, hey, he might surprise you. But, I think Winston is good enough for 7, 8, maybe, depending on how that schedule lines up. The other part of it – oh, sorry. No, you go ahead. I can add on.
Oh, no. No, yeah, you could go. You could go. You could go.
Other part of it is you're saying Russell Wilson, which I also saw as well. I'm kind of confused because they're sitting at 3. So, pick 3 in the draft. So, you're not going to bring Russell Wilson in to draft the Shador Cam Ward at that 3 spot and have him be the 3rd string quarterback. And that doesn't make sense. So it's like, hey, if they go get Russell Wilson, Are you leaning towards a Travis Hunter? Are you leaning towards a Abdul Carter?
Yep.
So, kind of up until we figure out what they do with Russ, if there is anything kind of lined up, I'm kind of unsure where the Giants might go direction-wise with the draft.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think some of it's ultimately what happens in front of them, and would they want to move up a spot or two? Like they're at 3, so you can't really move up much. But I think it depends. You're probably going to see Cam Ward go to Tennessee, and then really whatever the Browns do. Do they go Abdul Carter? I don't know if they'll draft quarterback. It feels like they're probably going to go Carter or Hunter or somebody like that, and then that would open the door for the Giants to maybe take Shadur. I think whoever's probably left over out of that, the Giants would end up taking, or do they go Travis Hunter, best player available, and then sign Russ and not take a quarterback this year and then take somebody next year and just kind of have Russ and Winston as your quarterback room? Many different ways that the Giants could go about this draft. And now you're hearing too, coming out of the combine, it feels like Shadur's draft stock starting to tank a little bit. You're starting every year this happens with different players, but now you're seeing, which I'll be honest, the Jackson Dart in the first round is just crazy. I mean, I think he's a good prospect. I think there is some things to like, but as a first round quarterback, no way. He's a day 2 guy. You want to maybe make the case to trade back into the first round for Dart. I can sort of understand that, but Dart should not be anywhere near the top 10, let alone the top 3. And a team like the Giants, where whoever they draft this year needs to be their franchise guy. You can't take that risk with Dart. So it'll be interesting. But just going back to the Jameis, like you said, I could get on board with that, where you're kind of 7 wins maybe with him, 7-8 wins potentially. He's entertaining, I think, is the biggest word that everybody comes up with, because it is. I mean, some of his interviews are always something must watch. But also just his play, right? He's going to go out there. He's going to throw 350, 400 yards at times in games. He'll throw 4 touchdowns. He'll throw 3 picks. He'll throw 2 picks, throw 3 touchdowns. You're probably looking at, if Winston would to play the full season this year, or let's say maybe more realistic, maybe he plays 13 games this year and somebody else gets the next 4. You're probably looking at a similar stat line like last year, where it's like 2,200, 250 yards. Let's say something like, I don't know, 15 touchdowns, maybe
15 to 17, somewhere.
15,
somewhere
17
around
touchdowns. There. Yeah, something like that. And 13 picks. Right?
Yeah, that's Jameis.
And Neighbor's going to get a ton of targets, right? And I think that's another good thing too, is probably what they thought about this in this deal is get a guy that's going to take chances, get a guy that's going to take risks, get a guy that's going to target Neighbors downfield. Because that's the whole thing with the Giants offense. It's been like this box offense. Both New York football teams, for some reason, are still stuck in the 1960s with these 5 to 10 yard offenses where they lack explosive plays. They don't stretch the field. They don't do any of those different things. It's just a lot of boring, vanilla, short yardage. And part of that is the quarterback play in this town has been horrible. But you've also feels like the trust in the quarterback hasn't been there. You can at least tell Winston to go out there and throw the ball, 30 times in a game, and 20 of those be downfield, and he'll go and do it. But the interception, some of the interceptions with Jameis are just head scratching. And I, every year it feels like, and he had a chance to win the starting job in New Orleans. And that was that one year in 2021 where he had, only 3 picks, but it just feels like this is just who he is, right? Like, do you think there's any chance that the interceptions can get better at this point in his career?
I want to say yes, because obviously as you get older, more experienced, you get a little wiser, yeah. But that's part of the risk that Jameis Winston takes. So it's kind of hard to say. Like, I don't see him kind of compare and contrast here. I kind of see him like a Sam Darnold arc type of thing, where he's going to go out and completely look like a different guy, increase the touchdowns, interceptions decrease slightly. I just don't see that from Jameis. I mean, we've been saying it this whole time. This is a guy that he's going to throw some passes, and you're kind of just like, Jameis, what are we doing? And it might sneak in there. He's going to throw somewhere. You're like, Jameis, what is he doing? It's an interception, or from our view of it, you're just like, how do you not see this guy in front of you? So I really don't think his case is going to be cut the interceptions down, see the touchdowns rise. I think Jameis is Jameis, and you're going to get what you're going to get, and it's that simple. But I know we said last week or every single time, for QB play for the Giants, you're already at rock bottom. So I mean, you got nothing to lose.
Yeah, I mean, he's an upgrade over Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, Tim Boyle, Drew Lock. It's just who he is. I agree. And he's, 31. I don't think he's doing much changing. I also think he realizes at this point in his career, he's being brought in to be a backup. He's going to be him. He's going to kind of be that silly guy in front of the microphone. He's going to be that guy on the field that just is going to take risks, because I think he realizes that he's never going to be the long-term answer anywhere. So he's just going to kind of play his game. And you mentioned a lot of the stupid interceptions. It feels like there's like 3 different types of interceptions. There is the good play by the defense. There is the like confused, good play by the D. Then there is the kind of tried to fit it into like a tight hole, didn't work, took a risk. And then there's just the dumb, like, where are you throwing the football interception? And Winston has a lot of those where he'll throw the ball and it's just like, what are we doing?
You are missing one, which still in Winston's case, I don't remember a lot of those, but you got the tip, batted up, drop ball, something like that. But no, Jameis falls in that tier 3 of just what did you see? Like, I want to put on a VR headset and see, or I don't know if you remember the Tua practice cam from last season during the off season in practice, and like, what are we looking at? What did you see that made you throw that ball? That's Jameis.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's so many head-scratching picks, and that's the Jameis Winston experience. You're going to get the 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, and you're going to get the maybe late in games. I'm interested in what the splits are actually in his interceptions late in games. I could probably pull it up here, like how many of his interceptions last year came in like the fourth quarter. Not that the Browns were in many games last year. Let's see here. Fourth quarter last year. Okay. 6 interceptions in the fourth quarter last year. 3 in the third, 2 in the second, 1 in the first. So part of that was probably because they were playing garbage time and he was just throwing the ball downfield, hoping somebody was down there. But that's interesting. He had 6 picks. So there's going to be at least 2 games this year, 2-3 games where Winston's going to have a back-breaking pick for the Giants. But then he'll follow it up the next week with 4 touchdowns. So it's
right. Right to my point, Giants fans, I remember watching, I think it was like a Thursday night game. It might have been Jameis and Bo Nix, and Jameis threw for like 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, and you're just like, this is Florida State prime Jameis Winston. Like, this guy looks great. Believe he followed up the next week with like 172 touchdowns and a stinker. Like, there's no consistency, so be ready for it. But what I can say, when Jameis, you can say this about a lot of guys too, but when Jameis is hot and everything is going, I mean, throws the ball pretty good.
Yeah. And that game, like you mentioned, was a shootout. Threw the ball 58 times, 497 yards. Crazy.
Yeah.
And then, like you mentioned, 2 weeks later against the Chiefs, 146 yards, 3 picks, no touchdowns.
Yep.
So it's
Jameis
4 touchdowns, then 3 picks. Just that's who he is. There's no changing. 30, the legendary 30 for 30 season. ESPN 30 for 30.
I think he ended that year on a pick 6, by the way, which makes it even funnier with his resume. But
yeah, he probably did. Those were like didn't they go 7-9 or something that year? I think it was.
I believe so.
They were like actually they were just average, just like Winston. I don't know how you throw 30 interceptions in a season. I just don't know how you do that.
I actually think, I could be wrong, but I think that was the same year. I remember I went to Tampa. Dallas played Tampa that year, and Jameis Winston decided to do nothing. And, obviously Tony Romo wasn't playing. He was hurt that season. But Jameis Winston decided to do nothing for 60 minutes of football, 57 minutes of football. Last 3 minutes turned into prime Omaha Peyton Manning, and they won off the last second field goal. And that was one of the worst experiences of my life and Jameis Winston is a problem. Was a reason for that because he led a game-winning drive. So
yeah,
thank you, Jameis.
James, come back, the comeback kid. See, does he have his revenge on the Cowboys, or does he have more in store against the Cowboys with the Giants this year?
Absolutely. I was telling my dad yesterday, he kind of was trying to catch up on any news that's going on. Tell him about the Jameis signing, and he was like, well, it's Jameis at the end of the day. I'm not too worried. I said, yeah, but Jameis is one of those guys that find a way to give us trouble. So,
Yep.
it's in for one game where he might throw for about 3 touchdowns on us. So, just don't know when that's going to be, but yeah.
Yep, definitely. Anyway, so that's the Winston stuff. He goes to the Giants. We'll see what else they have in store there for that quarterback room. Feels like Winston and a rookie, maybe another veteran. I don't know. I find it hard to believe that they still go after a guy like Russ.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't make much sense. Like, what's the point in signing Russ and then having Winston sit, or one of those guys sit? That just doesn't make much sense. But who knows? Maybe that's what they do. I mean, and then maybe draft a rookie and really have him sit a whole year, where it would take 2 guys going down and really just bury him and then play him next year. I don't know. I feel like this is it, and I feel like I still think they'll probably draft Shadur. But who knows? So Winston to the Giants. Another quarterback that's been in the news this week is Joe Milton. Cowboys specifically, one of the biggest teams. We'll also get into probably some other teams as well, because I feel like Milton could be a pretty solid landing spot for a variety of teams. And I'll be honest, I think for Milton himself, I don't know if the Cowboys would be the best landing spot. I think Milton would be in a better spot to go to a team that he can actually compete for a starting job or get a starting job soon. In Dallas, he's not getting past Dak. I mean, what was your thoughts on those rumors?
First and foremost, when I first kind of heard it, it's a bit irritating just because you traded a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance and he's not even coming back.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous. I'm not even going to rant about that. But, end of the year, you didn't even give the guy a chance to maybe come back as the backup after trading for him. It's ridiculous. And, malpractice by the front office. But the Joe Milton reports, I honestly weren't too mad at it. Right now, there's no quarterback on the roster behind that. And yes, I see your point. Obviously, Dak, let's just say another 3 to 4. Milton's not starting no time soon. But when you do look at the injury history lately for Dak, you got the thumb injury. You had the ankle injury. I know that was 2020, but, just piling up. Hamstring injury this year. You're kind of in a situation where for Dallas, you're kind of, hey, you've had some injuries. We need somebody that we can trust behind you. Cooper Rush, obviously, in Baltimore. So who may that be? If you can buy Milton low, we spoke about it a little bit, I think, off air last week, where Milton's not going to play in New England. So for him to get a chance behind Dak, learn from Dak, and then maybe, again, 3 to 4 years, you take in enough, and then you take over that starting spot. Milton will be at that time 28, 29, depending on, the timeline. You got a guy that's sitting behind Dak for that long, 3 to 4 years. I mean, yeah, I honestly like it. He has a big arm. He's athletic. I mean, not much take from the NFL of Joe Milton, but those who watched college, you see what he did at Tennessee that one year. The guy can throw the ball. That's a big thing. So I think now for him is going to be kind of trying to learn the game instead of you're not learning from Drake May respectfully, just because Drake May is also a rookie.
Yeah.
So learning from a vet, you're learning from a vet that has been successful in this league for so long. When it is time for you to step in, you can find success. So honestly, if they make the move at the right price, I wouldn't be too mad at it.
Yeah, from that perspective, I definitely understand a little bit more, especially too, just for injury assurance for Dak. And yeah, I think Milton and really New England in general, both sides would probably be smart just to move on, because they're going to roll with Drake May. Milton's not the answer there for New England, of course. So you can get some value for him and he can go elsewhere, learn from a veteran. Because, yeah, like you said, you're not learning from, Drake May, who, with all due respect, of course, is young and only entering year 2. He's got to do learning on his own, let alone mentor Joe Milton. Yeah, I mean, you would Is Will Greer? Is he
I
still
don't
around
know.
Dallas? Like,
I don't
what
know
is he doing
where
these days?
I don't know where he's at these days. I'm being so honest with you.
Because I think I saw him. He's still like on the depth chart, but I don't know if that's just like practice squad or whatever.
If
But
he is on the depth chart, it may be practice squad. I know
yeah,
that, the three that we had going into last year, obviously Lance, Rush, and Dak. So,
mhm,
I mean, do they possibly move Will Greer up to that QB2 spot? There's a possibility. I don't know. There's honestly no telling with Dallas. You never know what direction they're going to go in.
yeah,
That's just, the unfortunate part of it.
yeah. And just to the Milton thing too. I know I kind of on the Milton train a little bit. Last year, I know it was only one game, but looked good, right? Completed 75% of his passes, a touchdown, 241 yards. He needs to work on some other things, but his arm is very talented. That's something that's obviously very clear. His ability to throw the ball downfield and just Bazooka Joe is pretty fitting nickname. My biggest thing with Milton is, and why I wonder where would be the best fit. He's already 25 years old. He spent a lot of time in college between Michigan, then the COVID season happened, 6 years in college total. At 25, he's got to start to get into a position to start soon, just from his perspective. 2 years from now, he can't be 27 with no starting experience and expecting to have success. Made you go to Dallas for like a year or two and then elsewhere where you could sit and learn and then somebody else picks you up? Or do you go, just from Milton's perspective, is it better for him to go to a team like Cleveland, let's say, where he might have a chance to start right now? I mean, who's his competition? Kenny Pickett?
Yeah, that's the solid point, but it's like when you kind of look at the rest of the NFL, kind of at this current moment, where are you going to go where you might only sit for 2 years unless you piggyback behind Aaron Rodgers, and wherever Rodgers go, you go
Yeah.
behind him. And other than that, everywhere else is kind of solid when it comes to quarterback play, or at least have some longevity in terms of quarterback play. Only other team I can think of, you did name Cleveland with their struggles, but only other team I possibly can think of is Vegas. How long does Geno play in Vegas? But Geno doesn't seem like he's on a
Yeah.
decline. So, Geno still has another same boat, maybe 3 to 4 years as well, along with Dak, ever saying with Dak. So for Milton, I mean, there's kind of nowhere for him to go right now. And he's almost guaranteed to play in 2 years unless injury. But, injury can happen anywhere. But we're talking career ending injury. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. The age is just, he's in a tough spot. I would throw maybe the Giants. Like, the Giants say they're not done. Do you, hypothetically with the Giants, do they go, let's say they go like Hunter number 3, and then they trade for Milton and they use Milton kind of as like their developmental, young rookie, maybe. I guess, do you think he ultimately gets traded this offseason? Or do you think this is something next offseason, during the season, whatever, like a team, somebody goes down, they get desperate, they trade for him mid-year? How do you kind of see this, I guess, prediction
Yeah, I
wise?
think it's a trade deadline kind of move
Yeah.
if it doesn't happen, during this offseason now, but definitely before the deadline, somebody gets hurt and kind of depleted. They're like, hey, heck, why not? Let's go ahead and try to improve at quarterback. And I know the thing with the age, yes, he is 25, which is old. That's old for
Yeah.
a guy going into his second year, but the kind of part I look at it is like him being 25 when he is starting to say 28, 29 again. He hasn't taken the hits, like he hasn't taken,
Hmm.
wear and tear on his body because he's not playing. So is that age really that much of a factor when, he isn't beat up? But, the way the NFL works, nobody wants a 28, 29-year-old that has yet to ever start to kind of come in and be their starter. So he's in a tough spot, like you said.
Yeah, and I actually complimented the Patriots last year when they took both May and Milton, because my thought process was, well, you have two guys in there. You can't, you can't go wrong. I guess drafting two young players, one, of course, third overall, and then the other in the 6th round. Best case scenario, they both, pan out. Like Drake May is your guy, and then you're able to build some value for Milton and trade him. Or Milton turns out to somehow be the guy and May isn't. Like, either way, I think they were able to. I kind of like the fact that they took two guys last year. I think they picked up Dobbs too. So you're probably looking at Milton as the third. Yeah. And really, I mean, I guess just from New England's perspective, they really don't have much of an urge to even trade Milton right now, because what's the point? Like, have him another year. If May were to go down, I mean, what's the drop off between Dobbs and Milton?
Depends on which Dobbs you get.
But yeah, which Dobbs? If you're getting Minnesota Vikings for 2 games, Josh Dobbs, then yeah, we're talking about top 5 quarterback here.
Kind of to your point that of you saying there's no rush, because Milton obviously could beat out Dobbs for the backup spot in camp, and you don't want to trade Milton and then Dobbs gets in camp and gets injured, or just has a completely terrible camp, and now you're just stuck with QB2 that you can't trust if May does go down. So I don't know. It's kind of intriguing to see what the Patriots might do and what teams may pick up the phone for Milton, because again, you are getting a young, fresh guy only going into his 2nd year, big arm, like you said, he's very athletic. So it's like, do you kind of want to roll the dice and take your chance, or do you roll with what you got? But if again, there's one team that should probably pick up that phone, there is Dallas, because there's no quarterback on that roster. Yeah,
and like you mentioned, Dak's injury history, it could definitely make sense, and you'd learn from Dak. And do you think, this is kind of off topic, do you think Dak's in a Cowboys uniform his entire career?
That was actually a hot take.
A hot take. All right.
I deleted it, so I can say it now. I'm gonna say no. I really feel like in 2 to 3 years, Dak is out of there, because they're just not going to do anything to help him.
Yeah.
Win.
You think it'll be Dak himself wanting out, or like because he's not getting the help, whatever? Let's say 2 years from now, they're on, Schottenheimer's gone, they're hiring somebody else. Or do you think it's Jerry Jones saying, you've been here since 2016, I still don't have a Super Bowl. I'm only got about, I'm not walking this planet much longer. I need a Super Bowl, and whatever quarterback's coming out of that class, say we need to draft him, whatever.
I think it's going to be a mix of both. I think it's going to be still no Super Bowl, and like you're saying with Jerry's point, but then Dak is going to be like, hey, well, it's been me, CD, and a bunch of people that
Scrubs
probably want to be a bunch of others that won't be a winning recipe for any Super Bowl team. They're going to go their separate ways, and there's going to be a team like Pittsburgh to throw a massive bag at Dak that's already we've thought would have happened the last few years. Somebody like Pittsburgh might throw a massive bag at Dak, and he's going to go further than he's ever been with Dallas. I can see it now.
And he probably also throws out there, you had a chance at Derrick Henry, you didn't get him for me. This offseason, It feels like they didn't make much of an attempt to try and get Cooper Kupp, try and get Debo. I mean, I think if I was a Cowboys fan, I would have been on board with both of those guys. I know you probably were as well, to at least try. It feels like they weren't really involved much in either of those guys. Not saying they had to trade for him, but like we heard nothing about Debo and Cooper Kupp going to Dallas when they could have used either of them.
I don't know how true the report was, but I did see some report on Twitter that apparently, again, not true. I didn't fact check it. I'm just going off
didn't they call
Twitter
Cooper
said.
Kupp?
Yeah, Dak and CD called
right.
Cooper Kupp. Yeah. Dallas didn't like the price tag, and they decided to go separate. But it's just like
that's ridiculous. But the price tag though, it's ridiculous, because it's a position of need. The Cowboys should not be worried about the price.
I don't know. This is such a cheap ownership. Is always price tag this, price tag that. Who cares? Go get the players that you need to win. Not going to rank. I'm going to do a lot of that for the remainder of the year, but it's malpractice. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I would tend to agree. I think Dak probably won't end up in a Cowboys uniform when all is said and done at the end of his career. Like, I think he'll end up elsewhere. I don't know if he'll bounce around. Like, I think, he's going to be 32. So what, 4 years left maybe of good football?
If
That takes
if
you to about
he's
35.
I kind of want to say, yeah, we're seeing quarterbacks playing still great football at that age now.
Mm.
If he stays healthy, I mean, maybe 6-7 more
Yeah.
years of, because he doesn't take big hits or anything like that. So it's just the injury. So I think Dak does
Yeah.
have quite some time, but yeah, all those years will not be in a Cowboys uniform. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be the Dallas. Dallas is looking a couple years will be very interesting. Especially depending on this whole Schottenheimer hire goes. Like, it feels like if he's out in 2 years, they probably just blow it up and restart. But who knows? Anyway, let's get into some NFL hot takes. So we talked about this a little bit last week, getting into some hot takes. For this season, anything in general revolving around the NFL. So we've each got a couple of hot takes. I guess we should get going. You wanna begin? Floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll kind of stay in the NFC East in terms of hot takes and these type of things, but Giants fans, I'm so sorry, but Eli Manning was actually very overrated throughout his career, and that's the point I'm going to stand on.
I agree with that. I would say this about Eli. I think he had the best way. I forget which analyst said this, but the quote was really good. It was, he had Hall of Fame moments, but not a Hall of Fame career. That was
Absolutely.
talking about just the Hall of Fame thing. And I agree. You look at his numbers up against some of the other quarterbacks in his era, they blow him out of the water. It was those 2 Super Bowls, which is great. You can't take those away from them.
Yeah.
But we've talked about the whole Super Bowl argument. If we're going to just talk about Super Bowls comparing quarterbacks, then Nick Foles is better than Dan Marino with that logic. So
that's correct.
He had Hall of Fame moments. I don't think he had a Hall of Fame career. I think he'll eventually end up in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, I was never a big. And you look at the final 5-6 years of his career, it was just bad football.
Terrible.
After they won that Super Bowl, it was just bad from there on out. They had the 1 year with McAdoo where they caught lightning in a bottle, and it went into Green Bay, and that was the infamous boat pick with Beckham, Sterling Shepard, and all those guys. Then they get blown out in Green Bay, and that was the end of it. The next year was a disaster. Then 2019 was when, 2017 he got benched for Geno, I believe it was, which was a stupid move because they just tried. They shouldn't have taken away his record of starts. But either way, and 2018 was Shermer's first year debacle. 2019 they go and draft Jones. Jones takes over. It was a train wreck towards the tail end. And I agree. I mean, and I know at the end the offensive lines were awful, like the final 3-4 years, but he was very good in the postseason, regular season wise, everything else slightly above average. I mean, Peyton was miles better.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a few guys. I mean, this might even get hotter, but I mean, there's any day of the week where I'm taking Drew Brees or even Phillip Rivers. I might even throw Andy Dalton in there before I'm taking Eli Manning. And I know that that's very, very hot take, but I just don't think. I think if Eli had one less Super Bowl, the Hall of Fame talk wouldn't even be a thing.
Yeah, 100%. If he won that one Super Bowl in 2007, right, beat the Patriots, which was, of course, undefeated, all that stuff. Yeah. But if he had one Super Bowl, I totally agree. He would not be anywhere near, talking about him now. Or even, I don't even think it'd be a conversation for him to be in the Hall of Fame if he had one Super Bowl. I'll bring this up too. Right, Manning, the last name, big deal. If his last name was Eli Smith, let's just throw a common last name. If his name was Eli, no offense to Alex Smith, just Eli Smith, let's say. would he really be talked about in the light that he is? I feel like a lot of it too is more of in the Manning family, his brother Peyton, of course, the dad, all that stuff. It's a huge family. Now you got Arch Manning coming up now. It's like they're huge. If his last name was Eli Smith, he would be just like the rest of them. He'd be right in the kind of that with conglomerate with like Phillip Rivers and those guys where everyone kind of looks at them and they're like, they were solid. Not
If
first ballot Hall of Famer.
If he was not a Manning, the Giants Ring of Honor is not a thing. I don't think that's happening for him. Like everything that has happened, I don't think it's happening for him. Even with the same numbers, and again, same numbers, one less Super Bowl, and Eli Smith is his name. I don't think he is as glorified as he is. And you make a great point in his last 4 years, and you look like they were absolutely terrible. You cannot go out like that and then just, end up in the Hall of Fame.
Yep. I agree. And you look at, even you look at some of the other guys around him and their last years with teams. Like Rivers' last year in the NFL was that Colts season where he actually took them to the playoffs, right? Had a productive season. Who else? Drew Brees. I believe his last year was 2020. Took them to the playoffs. They lost, I believe it was Tampa, who of course went on to win the Super Bowl. Eli Manning's last season, Daniel Jones took over. Like, I think that, and I totally agree. I think that speaks volumes too. From start to finish, his career had, like, the consistency just wasn't quite there. There was some highs and there was a lot of bumps. There was a lot of good moments, bad moments. Again, Hall of Fame moments, not a Hall of Fame career. So I agree with that. All right. Next hot take. I'll throw it out here. Since we kind of went with a historic one there, I'll throw this one out. You guys probably know where I'm going with here. But from start to finish, now knowing what we know about the two coaches, if you had to give me a choice of who I'd not look, don't factor in age, whatever. Just if you gave me the choice, knowing what we already know, two coaches to lead my franchise, I'd take Mike Tomlin over Bill Belichick.
I said this last week off air. I'm going to say it again. That is not crazy. When you look at the history of Mike Tomlin and quarterback play, after, 2020, I think was the last time I can remember having a very good season. Big Ben, and they were fraudulent. I mean, it started 11-0, and I believe they lost in the first round of the wild card or whatever the case was. Quarterback play has been horrendous in Pittsburgh. And for them to not have a losing record, get to the playoffs, and just be competitive in that division. Now, hear me out. To further on to your point and to piggyback. If Pittsburgh, with everything the same way of, how it's been going for them and whatnot, if Pittsburgh played in the AFC South with the quarterback play that they still have had up until, all these years, they would probably have won 6 straight division titles in the AFC South. They are in the AFC North, obviously Baltimore. Cleveland was decent here. Cincinnati, that's a juggernaut with what they got. So it's tough for them to win that division. And they are still remaining positive, fighting for spots and playing meaningful football December and January. If the Pittsburgh Steelers were in any other division, AFC South, let me use again, they would be 6 straight division title winners. So that goes on to the point that what Mike Tomlin does or has done has, I think, been way more, you can say, impressive, a better resume than what Bill Belichick has done. And I'm dropping the mic on that.
I agree. I totally agree. Like Bill Belichick, and I even talked about this a little bit about with Sean Payton. I started to wonder what he would be like without Breeze, because the year after Breeze didn't go well, 2021. Then, of course, does the Fox stuff 2022, and then goes to Denver in 2023, didn't go well. It looked like Payton was maybe heading to that territory, 2 losing seasons post Drew Brees, kind of heading to that territory of what is he without Breeze. And then last year, of course, was a phenomenal year, taking Bo Nix and that team to playoffs, and he's completely erased that narrative. Belichick's nothing without Brady. Belichick is such a lost cause at this point in his career And call me a Jet fan hater. Tomlin knocked us out in the AFC title game. So this has nothing to do with bias. Like, believe me, the Jets and the Steelers have caused just very similar amounts of pain with the 2010 AFC title game beating us in Pittsburgh as New England. Of course, New England, massive amounts of pain, but I'm not some big Steelers fan either. Both teams I can't stand. But Belichick's such a lost cause. He had to go take a job in North Carolina because nobody wanted him. I guarantee you, if Mike Tomlin got fired right now, there would be 10 teams calling his phone, at least. I mean, I said it when they lost to the Ravens, and there was reports or some thoughts about, could this be it for Tomlin? Are they going to move on? I said it. If they move on from him, he better be in the Jets building the next day. I would have gave him a contract. I would have gave him a contract and said, whatever you want, we'll give it to you. You look at just the record. I pulled it up here. Brady's record, Belichick's record without Tom Brady, 84-103, including that's not even that's also putting into account his previous coaching jobs. But you just look at post Tom Brady era in New England, 7-9, 10-7, the 1 year with Mac Jones, and an 8-9 and 4-13. You look at Tomlin without Big Ben, well, 9-8, missed the playoffs, but still above 500, and then back-to-back 10-win seasons in 2023 and 2024. No, they didn't win playoff games, but back-to-back 10-win seasons, and his overall record since that point, 29-22. And he's made the playoffs 2 of the 3 years. Belichick, it was 1 out of the 4 years. And his overall record, again, that 84-103 record without Brady is a 44.9% winning percentage. Tomlin's above 500 without Roethlisberger. And let's throw this out there too. Like you mentioned, the quarterback play that Tomlin's been dealing with, much worse because Big Ben's not Tom Brady. Tom Brady's much better than Big Ben. If you gave Tomlin Brady, totally different story. If they swapped, then I would take Tomlin. If you swap them, I think you probably have another Super Bowl with Tomlin. And like you look at you want to say, oh well, Bill Belichick was dealing with Mac Jones. Look what Mike Tomlin's been dealing with. Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph.
Mitch Trubisky
last year, Mitch Trubisky. Look what he's been dealing with.
And that's just way tougher. I mean, when you have one guy, you can kind of build brick by brick with one guy, the direction of the franchise. But every week when you don't know who the starters are going to be, in Tomlin's case, like guys get fired for that. When they can't find consistent quarterback play, that always leads to a losing season, and guys get fired for that. Tomlin is still going strong. And again, in that division, I know they completely fell apart, but they were 10-3 with Russell Wilson this year and Justin Fields. I think a lot of people forget that. And these are, Fields more than likely going to be the starter with the Jets. Russ, we don't know what. But let's just say before Fields got to New York, neither one of those two are going to be a starter this year, possibly. They were 10-3 in the toughest division in football and managed to make the playoffs with terrible quarterback play, a wide receiver who is the Draymond Green of the NFL, and you can't even name the rest of the roster. I think that guy deserves a lot more credit than what he gets. Yeah,
I totally agree. And let's also, the division is a great point. Mike Tomlin has had to play in the AFC North or coach in the AFC North his entire career. Bill Belichick and the Patriots, how many years was the AFC East so irrelevant outside of them? For a long time, the Bills were in their 18-year playoff drought up until the 2017 season with Tyrod and, of course, 2019 and since with Josh Allen. And the Jets, of course, still and were, when he was there with Brady, in the midst of this 14-year playoff drought. And the Dolphins haven't won a playoff game in 20-plus years. So they were a non-factor, too. Like, it was the Patriots and nobody else. That's a lot more favorable than the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Browns. Like, and not even just saying that those, like, the Browns are great teams. Just AFC North football are just that in itself, AFC North football is completely different. Obviously one of the toughest divisions to play in. He's also had Harbaugh in his division. What has Belichick had in his division? Other than he had 2 years with Rex with the Jets. Okay, but what? Gaze twice in Miami with the Jets. I mean, Rex was a disaster with Buffalo. Then they had Doug Maroon. I mean, no, it's
Just
I think it's Tomlin.
the AFC North really reminds me of like the SEC, where college football compares to the SEC, where it's a gauntlet where you're going to have your teams that are great, of course, and then those Brady Belichick Patriots teams, you are Oregon in the Pac-12 when nobody else is good. Like, of course, you're going to run away with it. You're the only team there. And again, you can't take away all the Super Bowl success. Like, that's not at all what we're saying. At the end of the day, that's on the resume. That's history. You can't take that away from them. But when you just look at all the factors and how much tougher Tomlin has had it compared to Belichick and the success, and you brought up the records, I'm going with Tomlin.
Yeah, 100%. Tomlin gets, and I understand Patriot or Steelers fans, you haven't won a playoff game since 2017. I get all that. Actually, maybe even later than that, because 2017 they might have had a bye. I forget. Anyway, it's been a while, and I get it too, because I'm a Yankee fan, so I understand the whole get to the playoffs every year and fall short. And the Steelers and the Yankees are similar in their expectations and their history, of course. But come on now, I feel like a lot of people are discounting the fact that Tomlin has never had a losing season in his career. That's another thing to throw into this too. Like he's got to work with what he's given. I mean, you keep giving him these old, washed up, retread or young, terrible quarterbacks. Making the playoffs is insane. I don't know how you can expect much more out of the guy.
So actually, now that you say that, I have just a question out of curiosity. So you're saying that this coach here that's never had a losing record, hasn't won a Super Bowl, you wouldn't move on from that coach because the rosters haven't been that great. That's what you're telling me, right?
Yeah.
So what if I told you there was a quarterback that's never had a losing record in his entire career, but just because he haven't been to the Super Bowl, everyone thinks he's a terrible quarterback? It doesn't, like, see how it contradicts and it doesn't make sense? Not going to rant about that, but I'm just saying where, kind of to the point, it's not whether you're coaching, whether you're playing, whatever the case is, like, it takes an extreme amount of success in the National Football League to not have a losing record for X amount of years. Again, whether you are play calling or you're throwing the football around, that is incredibly difficult to do. So for the idiots that want to move on from Dak Prescott still, who's never had a losing record, you can't do that just because he hasn't won a Super Bowl. Tomlin hasn't won a Super Bowl in ages. He has won one, but he hasn't won one in ages. So that way, that's just the point of that. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's he's always been underrated throughout his career. And I think Belichick, too, is just overrated. I think it speaks volumes that if Tomlin would to get fired after this season, let's just say, I guarantee you that Tomlin will have offers, a ton of offers waiting for him. Who those offers are, who knows? I mean, you could project Giants most likely will probably looking for a new coach. Maybe Cleveland. I don't know if he'd stay in that. Maybe he stays in the AFC North. I mean, if they have another crappy year, do they hold on?
Yeah, to prove a point, he would stay in that division.
He might.
Dallas.
Maybe Dallas. Tennessee might be, like, if they win 4 games again with Callahan, I could see them moving on. Although I don't know if they would go with. I don't know. I guess we'll see how that all would play out. But I don't know if they would want to go with a defensive-minded coach. If they have Cam Ward entering year 2, they might want to go with the offensive mind. And this is all just projecting. I mean, I don't know who else could be out. Maybe,
I don't want to say Arizona. Maybe is a potential if they don't kind of get it together.
Maybe. I mean, no, this is not going to happen. I don't know if imagine they move on from Shanahan and Tomlin takes over in San Fran.
You've been pitching that for the last, 2 off seasons, and
I feel like it's Shanahan. It's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. And the way that they're building, the way that they've been handling this offseason, it just feels like San Francisco's head in that direction of like a retool. And I could see a world where they win 5 games this year, 6 games, and they're, kind of, let's just kind of blow it up in a way. Like, maybe, I don't know.
That's actually not crazy at all.
No, it's not. I mean, there was some San Fran fans that wanted him gone after the Super Bowl, let alone now after, 2 years, maybe missing the playoffs. Yeah. So, yeah, there will definitely be some teams. Indy, they'll probably, I mean, I don't have a ton of faith in Shane Steichen. I think you could have made the case to move on from him and the GM after this past season, at least the GM definitely, and Chris Ballard, I think that's how you pronounce the name. But anyway, we'll see what happens to Tomlin. But my point is, I think Tomlin, I would be willing to bet a lot of money that Tomlin would get offers right away. Belichick almost had the Atlanta job last year, but I think that also speaks volume. Atlanta didn't trust handing the keys to the franchise because Belichick wants to do everything his way. And I think Tomlin does too, but I think Belichick's vision and the way he just goes about his business a little bit different than Tomlin. Belichick's going to bring in, like, he buries coaches on his coaching staff. He's going to have all of his kids there. It's just the way he does things. It's a lot. He goes to UNC because nobody wanted him this year. Tomlin, I doubt that happens. Anyway, what's your next one?
There's a guy talking about the NFC South. The quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be top 3 in MVP voting next season. And I'm going to stand on that. Look, Baker Mayfield last season, the year that Baker Mayfield had last year, losing Godwin, of course, losing Mike Evans for a good amount of time. You were out there. Cade Otton became Gronkowski out of nowhere. You were throwing to Jalen McMillan and still had a very phenomenal season. Godwin obviously back. Evans is going to be back. Otton is probably taking another step. Bucky Irvin takes another step. Jalen McMillan is now trusted more by Baker and takes another step. What is stopping Baker Mayfield? And I know interceptions. He is in that Jameis kind of territory where you got some interceptions where you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I think he's cut back a lot, but he still has a few. There's no reason why I don't think Baker and Liam Cohen obviously leaving offense might look a little different. I am taking that into account. But there's no reason why Baker doesn't throw for like 42 touchdowns next year, 4,300 yards, and let's say 12 interceptions. And not if, but when he does, come back to this video because Baker will be top 3 in MVP voting next year.
Yeah, I could totally see that. We talked about this past season that you could make a case just this past year for him to win MVP. He doesn't get enough attention. I think it's the fact that he plays in the NFC South, Tampa. He's not, necessarily like in the popularity as like a Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Lamar. But you look at his numbers in some areas, he was better than all those guys. This past year, right? 41 touchdowns, 4,500 yards, second in touchdowns, third in yards, 61.6 QBR, which was top 15. He's awesome. He's been great. I've gained a lot of respect for Baker. I think, I was never a big Baker guy coming out of college. Didn't love him. Maybe it was some of it had to do with, Jets took Darnold, Browns took Baker. So, obviously just that in itself, I was all in on the Darnold train. So maybe that had something to do with it. But I didn't never like the way he acted in college, all that stuff. But he's grown on me a lot more where he's revived his career. I don't know. I've just gained this new level of respect for him. He's awesome. He's great. And that's another thing too, right? We talk about the meaning of MVP. It's not always so much about the numbers. It's more so, are you truly the most valuable? Like if you take you off the team, are they affected in that way? We have talked a little bit about like Lamar with Derrick Henry, or was it Lamar? Was it Lamar or Goff? Who was it? Where
I think if we took both of them off their teams, they both would still be.
Yeah, because we had to talk about. Yeah, we did that with the playoff teams, didn't we? where it was like, if you take the quarterback off the playoff team, which team could still make a run?
Yeah.
And I think it was Baltimore. But the point is, Tampa wasn't, because they lost Godwin for the year. If you take Mayfield out of there, it's over. Like, you look at the talent around him, yeah, Cade Otton. I mean, he had to elevate him. I mean, look at just that in itself. So in terms, like, you take Mayfield off that team, they're awful. So I agree. I would certainly see that. And coaching wise, let's be honest, Todd Bowles, and I've said this all the time, nothing against the guy. He's not a good coach. Todd Bowles is not a good coach. So he's dealing with that too. When Lamar's got Harbaugh, Goff had Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell. I know he's got Liam Cohen, or had Liam Cohen, but Bowles is not a good coach. Okay. I think Mayfield's elevating Bowles. I can't say that about a lot of other quarterbacks in the NFL. Maybe Allen and Sean McDermott elevating him. Like, it's probably more Allen than it is McDermott, because McDermott does have very questionable moments. But I think Mayfield does elevate even Bowles.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was about to say. I mean, if things were to kind of go downhill in the next 2 years, Bowles will get another opportunity thanks to Baker Mayfield, kind of with the career that he's having. But I also think people forget he stepped in for Tom Brady after the success that Tampa had, after just the struggles of Tampa. Now it's all full circle, because we're kind of back to Jameis, but all the high expectations for Jameis, for Tampa, and that not going as planned. You eventually get Brady, all the success there, and it's just like, okay, no guy's ever going to like fill the shoes of Tom Brady. We're through as an organization. We're about to go through this rough patch. Let's get prepped for the draft. Who's the next guy? Baker steps in, and not only have they been fun to watch, but it's not like they're getting to the playoffs. And, that division is weak as well, but it's not like they're getting to the playoffs every year. Wild card, they're getting completely stumped over and ran over. Like, they are competitive. They get into these wild card games, and they make you sweat. They make you nervous. They punch you in the mouth, and a lot of that has to do with more Baker than it is Todd Bowles. So I've always liked Baker. This might be some bias. I also got a chance to watch him play in college, so that was quite the experience down in Miami. But, I think Baker is a phenomenal talent, and what we are seeing out of Baker these last 2 years in Tampa is what we thought we would get in Cleveland. We're finally getting it now.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's been, and I always say this too, I was at the Jets-Bucks joint practice in 2023 when the Jets had Hard Knocks and all that stuff. And I remember looking at that team and I'm like, yeah, they are not winning more than 5 games. Bowles after Arians and Bowles after the 1 year with Brady, it just felt like it was set up where they were going to have him there for a year, placeholder, and then move on, blow it up. And that hasn't been the case. All right. My next hot take, you might have this as well. I'm going to stay in the NFC South. Panthers will make the playoffs.
I have that start, actually, because that was my main one.
It was, I don't know. I mean, again, we just got done talking about the Bucks, and history tells us there's only one team coming out of that division. But Carolina's a sleeper. Last year we spent a lot of time bashing Carolina, Charlotte, all that stuff. This year's not the case. We've talked about it a lot, right? Bryce Young was one of those guys that actually benefited from getting benched. And maybe getting benched might have actually saved his career, because this was a guy that looked awful, looked lost. It looked like it was going to be another one of these failed quarterbacks. Look back on it, all these Panthers fans and be like, oh, what if we took Stroud, all this stuff. And not saying Bryce Young has hit that level. Last year still overall just 15 touchdowns, but it was more so what he looked like down the stretch, right? Final 3 games of the season had 7 touchdowns, no picks. He almost went into Philly and won. Should have went into Philly and won. He beat Arizona, had the win against Atlanta to close out the year. Like, they started to win games. They played Tampa tight. They lost in overtime. As crazy as it sounds, you look at the Panthers last year, they could have easily had 3 to 4 more wins, where we might be talking about a 9-8 team coming out of last season as opposed to a 5-12 team. Like, they almost beat Philly. They lost in overtime to Tampa. They lost on a game losing field goal to Kansas City. 3 games right there that they could have won. They had the Denver game. They lost by, I think, 2 scores it was. But I think they were tied, and then defensively or offensively, Denver kind of took off in the second half, I believe it was. I think it was like 7-7 or whatever going to halftime. Either way. But like, they could have had easily 3 to 4 more wins than they did.
And did they split with Tampa last year? I can't remember. I know the loss in overtime off the fumble.
No, they got blown out in the other Tampa game, but they did lose. I mean, they lost 48-14 in the second Tampa game, but from a Bryce Young perspective, 2 touchdowns on the day, 203 yards. Defensively, they just couldn't stop a nosebleed, it seems. Yeah, I mean, it was 27-14 at half. So, but the first Tampa game, yeah, it was overtime loss. But they were in it.
Just,
you know,
like you said, 3 to 4. We're talking 3 to 4 games that go differently. Remember that this division wasn't clinched until week 18. Like, it took Tampa win and Atlanta, lost. So a few games go differently for Carolina. I mean, we're talking about possibly 3 teams fighting for a spot at the end of the year. So they weren't too far off. And again, you are what your record says you are at the end of the day. But for Carolina, which would be 5-12, but to see how that year ended, and I know we have both said this before, it kind of almost makes you think of the Lions when they went into Green Bay and kept Green Bay from getting into the playoffs.
Yep.
And we've seen what they, have accomplished since then. For Carolina's sake, Leggett is going to take another step. Honestly, the weapons are kind of not that great. I can't even think of anyone outside of Leggett. I think Thielen still, who had a great year.
Yeah, Thielen.
You dealt with Deontay Johnson this year. Like, there was so much going on for Carolina. I think they are going to have a great year. And I as well have them making the playoffs. Not saying they are going to win the division. Obviously, my top 3 MVP, Baker Mayfield, and the Bucs will still win that division. But the NFC South will get 2 teams in this year.
Yeah, I agree. And even they've got, Chuba Hubbard, who had a good season last year. You throw him back into the mix, he's a solid piece to have. Like,
I'm not gonna lie. Jatavion Sanders, the tight end they drafted from Texas, probably take another jump this year. So they have some young pieces and then elderly Thielen, but I mean, I think they're gonna get better in the draft. A lot of talent to go after.
Yeah, you got to get improve through the draft, and also just look at the teams around him, right? Atlanta last year came in with a lot of hype. Kirk Cousins, it failed. We don't know what Michael Penix is. New Orleans, you have some hope around Kellen Moore, but I don't know. Derek Carr's hit his ceiling, and I don't know what Spencer Rattler's really going to turn into. You went from talking about Bryce Young as a bust to Bryce Young being the pretty clear second best quarterback in this division.
Yep.
Last year, I think going into it, you probably expected more out of Kirk, definitely more out of Baker. And you maybe even could have made the case with how bad he played in year 1 that Derek Carr you would have taken at the time. But after what he showed, towards the end of last season, you make a good point. It feels very similar to like a Detroit Lions type of turnaround where they eliminate a team on the road last week of the season, start to gain some hype, and year 3 is where they take off. Now, not saying they're going to go make the NFC title game.
Yeah.
I doubt that happens. Detroit had a lot more talent, and I would also say Goff is better than Bryce Young at that time, right? But make the playoffs, make a wild card, I could see it happening. Dave Canales, it feels like, found something in Bryce Young that hopefully continues for them. So I'm definitely in agreement there. All right, any other hot takes you got?
To wrap it up, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, the Chiefs dynasty is over. I think that division is going to be a lot tougher than it has been in previous years. If Bo Nix does not go through a sophomore slump, they're obviously going to be better. I think they're going to get a lot more talent as well. They've already gotten talent on both sides of the ball in free agency. The Chargers, I think they take another jump as well. Raiders are going to be better with Geno, depending on what they do, pending, the draft. The Chiefs' dynasty is over, and they might even miss the playoffs this year. I'm going to end it on that.
That's hot. That's very hot.
That's hot. Scorching.
Now, I have like two other ones. One of them actually kind of builds off of the one you were just on. I'll throw this out there. And I had this one listed, and the other one I sort of had listed that I'll tell you in a second. But the first one, I'm glad you brought up Kansas City because I'm going to throw Denver out there. I'm going to say right now, Denver wins the AFC West. That's my hot take. Denver wins the AFC West. Okay. It's not crazy because they should have swept. If Voodoo Magic wins didn't exist, they would have swept Kansas City last year because they wouldn't have had that field goal blocked. They should have beat and then they smoked them. I understand they were playing all backups, but either way, they should have swept them. It's only a matter of time. Do I feel like this one score wins for Kansas City is just going to start to end? Like it gets to a point where winning all these games by one score, it's not going to work anymore. And I just don't see Kansas City getting better. Like they're not doing anything. You look at Denver. We talked about the other day, last week, I think it was. They made some really nice moves, right? They added Evan Ingram. You added Hufanga. You added Dre Greenlaw. So two pieces to a already very good defense. Then Evan Ingram, a massive upgrade at tight end over Adam Trotman and guys like that who barely did anything for the team last year. Bo Nix, as long as he doesn't go through a rookie or a sophomore slump, he should be better than he was this year. I don't see why not Denver can't win the division. They were 10-7, but again, you look at some of those losses, right? They only lost by 7 to the Chargers, 2 to Kansas City. They had that Bengals game where they lost in overtime. You could have easily chalked up 2 to 3 more wins. I don't think it's crazy to say Denver can win 12, 13 games.
I'm right with you. And I mean, I know we said it last week. The only concern is the running back room, which they can't improve in the draft. So I actually like that. Denver to win. We went from talking about Zach Wilson being the guy in Denver and bashing them last offseason. Now, 365 later, we're talking about them winning the AFC West. And I don't think that's crazy. And I'm on board with it.
Yeah. And I'll say this. Last hot take. This is crazy. I don't even know if I fully believe it. I think I'm just going to say it and leave it. Joe Milton has potential to be better than Drake May. I'm just going to say it, and I think I'm going to leave it.
Joe Milton on the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
Has potential to be better than Drake May. That's not crazy. Right system. We know he's far more. I don't know.
Joe.
Definitely a bigger arm. I don't know if you want to say more athletic. Drake May kind of surprised me with his escapability and his legs and that whatnot. So don't know which way to kind of give the arrow to as far as being athletic. But, I mean, Drake May throwing the ball to CeeDee Lamb for 3 to 4 years and Luther Burden, let's say, or Ted McMillan, if they remember that the draft does start in April and you can draft a receiver, by the way. If they go get a receiver in the draft and, Milton is – throwing to those guys, sign me up.
Yeah. Joe Milton, CeeDee Lamb.
That's the duo.
The duo. Is that maybe that's it. They trade for Joe Milton. 2 years from now, they get rid of Dak and Joe Milton steps in. Maybe Jerry Jones. Maybe that's what last year he was scribbling because that was his Joe Milton scouting report.
Mm-hmm. I would have.
It's all coming together now.
It makes sense because the scribbles also is Luther Burden or McMillan's ability to run around defenders. So it's just in circle. Yeah. So you throw. It makes sense.
McMillan there. Now it's all adding. See, Jerry was just thinking ahead. He was just thinking ahead.
It's okay. It's all right to plan for 3 years in the future. Like, why win a Super Bowl now when you can win it in 2028? I get it. It makes sense.
I mean, exactly. Why? That's a great point. Why even try this year when you can just win it in 2028 or 2029?
Yeah. When everyone thinks you're irrelevant, then you can get back relevant.
Yeah. You're going to be when everybody thinks that when everybody's out, you come back.
Yep. That's it.
Well, this is it. We got the script here. This is the script. Cowboys 2028 Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
Take it to the bank. You know, it's actually funny you mentioned 2028 because I know we can finish this up. My grandpa is actually a huge Commanders fan. And all these years, right? It's just been bad football. Washington, the Jets, they suck. And I've always told him that 2028 will be when Washington wins the Super Bowl. So do we get I told him like 2028 was like, I would say like 2019. I used to tell him like, 2028. I just throw a random year out there. Washington will probably win one before that. But is it crazy to say we get Jaden Daniels, Joe Milton, NFC title game in 2028?
It is crazy when you put the Dallas Cowboys in it because it first used to be Washington. You're just like, no way Washington even gets there. But clearly that's not a problem for them. But man, I wish we could have seen that matchup in college. Tennessee's Joe Milton and LSU's Jaden Daniels. What a game that would have been. Oh no, it's not crazy to say that. It's only crazy because it's Dallas, and that's the only reason why.
I feel like for Washington, what is it, 2025 right now? Right. So they would have to go 2 more years, right? 2026, 2027.
Yeah. Yeah.
They couldn't win one this year. They couldn't win one next year. Win the year after. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to 25, 26.
So 25, 26, then
26, 27, 27, 28. Yeah, three more years.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like Washington can I mean, they were a game away from getting there this year, you know?
They were, but they're not getting back. Surely I can tell you that.
Not getting back to the NFC title game?
Not at all. Not at all.
Interesting.
No, not at all. We seen it with, and I know they didn't make the title game, but we see this year in and year round where teams have this one Cinderella run and they hype it up, and they do absolutely nothing the next year. Washington will still finish second in the division. They will still make the playoffs, but they are a second round exit to whoever that may be, but they're not getting to the NFC Championship.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that just because making it to the NFC title game is, I mean, you really, for Washington, I could see how this year will end up in a disappointment because you really can't, you can only get to one more game than that. Yeah. You know, like if they lose in the wild card, lose in the divisional, it's technically worse than last year. Yep. They'd have to get to the Super Bowl for it to be better than last year. So, yeah, when you set the bar that high, I could see it. I guess my only thing is they've got the franchise quarterback.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know, man. I mean, it is a roster that is full of some older guys. Like, are you going to start to see guys get run down? Like, is Bobby Wagner had a very good year, but can you continue to bank on him at this point in his career? Because every player is different. Every player is different where sometimes they have that slow decline. Sometimes they really don't decline at all. Sometimes they hit a wall. You know, do you get like one of these guys that just hit a wall and just stink next year?
Possibly. I don't know who that's going to be, though. Yeah. That's the only thing. I don't know. But looking at, to wrap it up with Washington, just wrap up everything, you know, they did. Michael Gallup unretired and is now a Washington Commander. That receiving core is Michael Gallup, Terry McLaurin, and Deebo Samuel. That's a scary team. That is a very scary team. I know Gallup didn't look great in Dallas to kind of end it. But are we talking about a comeback player of the year in Michael Gallup this year? We're finishing like 1,300 yards. Just a great year.
Yeah.
Washington is scary, but not scary enough to make it to the title game. They're losing second round.
All right, one more hot take. Hot take Super Bowl team this year. As we sit here in March, if you had to pick one team that doesn't look like they're going to make the Super Bowl, but like that one hot take team, like Washington last year, nobody saw that coming. They didn't make the Super Bowl, but, you know, make the NFC title game. Who do you have if you had to pick one like hot take team to make a run?
That's kind of tough. You know, this is going to contradict everything that I just said last week. But I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. That's going to be my team. Division, very easy division. Darnold's playing good. Cup has a lot. Everything we kind of went over. If I had to pick one, I'm going to go with the Seahawks.
That's good. That's good. I don't know. I feel like somebody at AFC West. I feel like Denver's not really much of a hot take. I guess Cincy wouldn't be either. Although I do think Cincy, if they can get the defense figured out, I would take them right now. But Vegas, maybe.
Yes.
Geno, Pete Carroll. They've got to add more weapons though. Like you've got Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, but like Jacoby Myers is not a number one on a team that's going to go to the deep in the playoffs. And maybe Vegas.
I forgot about the Rams.
Rams.
Devontae Adams, Puka, Kyron.
How about this for one? This might be kind of weird because they went 14-3, but I feel like Minnesota's going to get slept on going into this year, especially in that division where everyone's talking about Detroit all the time. Green Bay will be right in the conversation again, and especially Chicago. Like everyone's hyping up Chicago again. I feel like Minnesota is kind of be the underrated team. Definitely will be if JJ McCarthy's under center. I don't think it's crazy whoever's suiting up at quarterback for Minnesota next year, where they can go win 10, 11 games again. Not maybe 14, but they can go win 11 games, make the playoffs, and who knows, maybe they make another run. The thing with Minnesota is they don't win in the playoffs. So asking them to make a run is a lot.
I mean, we said it once, but Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, they're all down there somewhere, right? So get the ball to your weapons, let them do what they do. And, I can see 10-11 if quarterback, whoever that is, just doesn't turn the ball over.
Yes. Justin Fields and the New York Jets. How about that? I already got my AFC title game tickets to MetLife already ready.
All right. Well,
one can dream. Any closing thoughts?
I did have another hot take, but we can wrap it up off of this one seriously. It's not going to go too much into it. Daniel Jones will be the starter after the bye week for the Colts. That's all I have to say about that.
That's a good one.
And that's it. Yeah.
It's a good one. You see Daniel Jones was teaching a class the other day?
I did.
Everyone was like, how to take $100 million from your employer.
I was about to say, was it how to do a heist, how to not throw the football? There's gonna be a lot of things he was teaching.
Yeah. All tips that are probably not going to get you anywhere in life, just like it has for Daniel Jones. It hasn't gotten him very far in the NFL.
Yeah.
So
that's it. How to rob your NFL team. That's it.
Yep. Anyway, that'll do it. We'll talk to you guys next week. Stay tuned. We might have some more hot takes the rest of the offseason as well. Because now
a few are starting to kind of brew up. I'm kind of starting to think, and they're cooking.
Yeah, now it's like, I had my list, and then now I'm like, there might be some more on the table. So we'll continue to reveal some more hot takes as the offseason goes on.
I will say this to end it. You started us off with the hot takes last week when the whole nation was in on St. John's. You might have been the only bracket to have them losing. In round of 32, thanks to them, bracket is busted. So kudos to that. I got to give you props. Or I thought you were insane, and I guess you know all along. Yes.
I've been standing on the St. John's losing in the second round hill probably for about like 2 months, since like January. It's been a while. I've been on the St. John's. People call me a St. John's hater. I just telling people how I feel about St. John's. I didn't think they were going to get past. 3 perfect brackets remain. Unfortunately, mine is not one of them, although I did get the St. John's pick right. But if one of, good luck to the rest of you on your brackets. Like if one of the 3 people out there is watching this, I hope your bracket is perfect the rest of the way, because that's never happened. So anyway, we'll talk to you guys next week. As always, thanks for watching.